Sat down on Sunday night thinking, this could be the end. This could be the end for the Cubs, but instead, they prove resilient. Joe Madden manages the bullpen. Aroldis Chapman comes in and gets 8 outs. And here to talk all things baseball, one of our defending champions, and a guy that I used to read as a young lad when he was a scribe at the USA Today for many, many years, covering the great game of baseball. He's now a professor here at Johns Hopkins, as well as an author of many, many baseball books, as well as other things that he does. We welcome Tim Wendell back onto the program. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Tim_Wendell. That's Wendel. And he is as disheveled as the Cubs are here today. Who knew? Cubs and Indians, man. First off, you and I haven't had a chance to put that into perspective. I know everybody else has, but we've been watching baseball a long time. This is sort of the least likely to succeed class, right, Tim?
No, very much so, Nestor. In fact, if anything, I kind of wish just one of them had made it, and we could have really gone agog over it. Instead, it's almost like with the two of them making it and having that one in so long, I'm getting a little tired of it. So it's probably been good that we finally have a World Series to talk about, and good to see Joe Madden finally managing like it's a World Series.
Well, and maybe this takes us back to Buck Showalter, and this is a good time to get into that because every person I've talked to, it's been a month, right? So I mean, it's not too late, it's not too early, but I haven't talked to you about it. I haven't found anyone that can in any way justify his decision. And I think this 8-out thing that Joe Madden pulled on Sunday night, if Chapman gives up a home run in the 8th or the 9th and they wind up losing because of it, I mean, I guess they're second-guessing, but there's one thing about going out there with your best players. And Buck didn't do that, but it's almost set the tone for everyone else to use Chapman or Miller, whomever your person is, for longer than 3 or 4 outs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's, I think, nothing more bittersweet than going home, at the end of the season, being eliminated for good and realizing you had your best pitcher, maybe some of your best players still on the bench, and they never got in the game. This is where I give Terry Francona a lot of credit. And, at times we talk about, really great managers in the game. You look at what he did in Boston, what he had to overcome there, et cetera. He set the tone in this series by, putting in Miller when he needed to, rolling out his bullpen in all these different ways. And it wasn't with the way the Royals had done it, with, certain guys, specific guys, 7th, 8th, 9th inning. And it took a while for Ned Yost to get over that. I give Francona a ton of credit because he seized the day and did it by saying, hang on, you do things one way in the regular season, but now we're in the postseason and it's kitty bar the door. We got to do what we need to do. And I'm relieved that, and I love Joe Madden. I love, both of these managers I think are top flight, but Joe Madden now with the 8-out save by Chapman on Sunday night has seen the light too. And that's why I think we're set up potentially for a really interesting conclusion to this World Series.
Yeah, Cubs have had trouble hitting the ball, right? I mean, more than we thought, and maybe the Indians' pitching is better than we thought. And also, the notion that one of these managers is a genius and are going to go with 4 pitchers, the other one's going to go with 3, it really does create questions. I mean, in Cleveland, they're doing it by, because they have to, right? I mean, it's either throw this kid who's made, 2 starts in the big leagues like he did in Toronto, throw him out there, or go on shorter rests for all these guys. Now that this thing has gone back to Cleveland, it's going to be interesting to see what Tomlin looks like on short rest again and what it's going to look like, especially if it gets to Game 7 where you're going to have to go back to your ace again and have him pull the rabbit out of the hat if it doesn't go well on Tuesday night.
Yeah, for sure. And the A's, they're going back to Hoover is, going potentially on not set up as well as Kyle Hendricks. I mean, this is what I think is so intriguing right now. And I was really kind of bummed about this series because it seemed like it was, one of these teams is going to win after not winning for so long, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're starting to have the fun that we need to have in a World Series where you start going, we put that guy in. Oh, they're starting this guy. And we can kind of sit back and do the things we love to do as fans and micromanage and second guess. But I would think, granted, you've got to go back to Cleveland, but if you're a Cubs fan and you got Arrieta and Hendricks going 1-2, and Lester just gave you a gem of a game on Sunday night, you're going, I'm starting to like my odds. And especially if Madden, etc., is willing to use Chapman in the way he did the other night. Chapman looked bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to me. Looks like give him a day of rest, he's ready for another 8-out save. So suddenly we're having some real fun. You're absolutely right, Nestor. I mean, Cleveland had to kind of do what they needed to do here pitching-wise out of necessity, even though I think Francona seized the day and turns it into an advantage. What's fun now is to see that the Cubs are stacked up pretty well starting pitching-wise. So now we've got the great, okay, you better with really good starting pitching, or you better with like guys like Miller and Guber out of the bullpen, etc. And you start having some real fun with it.
And how about personalities, right? Like all these World Series sort of take on something and there's meaning, but there are so many young players in this World Series that I'm watching and saying, 10 years from now, it's going to be interesting to see what Lindor has done with his career. Where Bryant and Rizzo and Addison Russell and some of these halls of very good young guys, these guys under the age of 27 who haven't even signed second contract, who really aren't even wealthy yet. They haven't made that kind of dough yet. There's a bunch of guys here that monitoring the rest of their careers are going to be judged back from the minute they were discovered, which was right around now, to how many championships they're going to win. Baez, another kid. There are some really good baseball players that their best is in front of them. This isn't an old-timers World Series. This is a World Series where you look at these teams and say, I wonder if the Indians are going to be able to spend some money and keep some of these kids around. Certainly the Cubs are going to have the money to be able to keep guys around, and the continuity with the manager and the front office that, this will not be the first Halloween where we watch one of these teams play. Both of these teams will be pretty good for the next couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I think they're set up very, very well. And I think what's intriguing, and that's as you just pointed out, is we're seeing them come of age, at least some of them right now. And that makes it really fun, too. I mean, and one of the things, if I had any major criticism coming from the Cubs camp, what I was hearing out of that for maybe the first couple games as I fell behind in the series, was it was almost like they were almost looking ahead already to future years. And it was like going, no, you're here now. Let's see what damage you could do, instead of, making it sound like, we've got a 3-game losing streak in the middle of July and we've still got an 8-game lead or something like that. And so watching them come of age is great, but now we're seeing both organizations maybe ask more of some of these younger players than maybe they even thought they were going to a week ago. And that makes it a lot of fun.
Tim Wendell covers all things baseball and has for many, many years. He's an author, writes books, also a professor up here at Johns Hopkins, and always in the area, always ready to talk some baseball. And you miss writing about it. I mean, how many World Series did you cover? I mean, somebody asked me how many games I've been to. I think I've sat at 60 or 70 World Series games in the course of my life, maybe even more than that. It's been a little while, and I don't know, as I get older and it gets colder and I see how cold it is, I mean, I remember freezing my ass off in Cleveland.
Press box, baby. I hated it.
Yeah, I remember being in Cleveland in 95 and 97. I remember being at Yankee Stadium some nights when it's 42 degrees, and it's not very baseball-like, and certainly as we get up on, this one's going to wind up ending in November again. I kind of like watching it, but there is an energy about it that is unique to baseball. I mean, it's when, and I said this to people when the World Series coming to Cleveland, I said, the World Series in Cleveland's like a football game. It reminds me of Monday Night Football. Baseball games aren't that way in the regular season usually. The amp up and the ramp up and what we've seen around Wrigley Field may be unprecedented. I don't think we've ever seen anything like 30,000 people out in the streets in Wrigley Field outside the game.
No. And you asked, do I miss it? And at times, yeah, and this is the time of year I miss it. Even though I don't know if I miss it being out. I still remember freezing to death in Yankee Stadium one time. But I covered 12 World Series. In fact, kind of my Valentine to my first World Series I ever covered was 1991 with the Twins and the Braves, and did a book on that called Down to the Last Pitch. And it's funny, my wife sometimes asks me that same question. Do you miss it? And we're talking now doing baseball as a beat as opposed to kind of coming in, which is maybe more fun. And I've told her honestly, I said, right about 3 weeks ago, I said, this is where I miss it again. And for some reason, I love that best of 5, opening series. I covered some crazy ones with that. But
best game I ever saw was a Game 5 in Oakland. It was the crotch chop game. I happened to be in
Yes.
Vegas. The Boston-Oakland game was the hottest last game. I still, when people say to me, what's the best baseball game you ever attended, not witnessed on television, I witnessed a lot of World Series games. I was there for a lot of dramatic stuff. I mean, I was there the night Joe Carter hit the walk-off. I know you were too.
Mm-hmm.
I was there the night that Leyritz hit the home run down in Atlanta that changed everything, really, for the franchise for the Yankees. It was sort of the launching point for them. I've seen some dramatic stuff, but, those early games, like the Buck Showalter game, you get eliminated so quickly. It's a whole season of hope, and it's 98 wins or 103 wins, and all of a sudden you look up like the Cubs did over the weekend and say, my God, we're down 3-1. What the hell happened, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, just the time frame in it, that first round stuff now even accentuated maybe by the wild card game. It's like I don't know, use literary terms, kind of a very quick short story that you like. And what we're talking about now with the World Series is, more of a longer tale, a novel. I mean, the narrative plays out, and we have a lot of fun with it. So it's but I think in some ways, you mentioned one of the gripes I have right now about the way things are set up, Nestor. We're going into November again, and we're playing baseball, in Cleveland and Chicago. Man, I was talking to Bob Costas the other day, some other folks. We got to do something with this, with this schedule. So we're ending a little bit earlier. I mean, just having playing games after Halloween, I just find very, very strange. And you were just talking about some of the great, games, Joe Carter's homer, perhaps when the Red Sox win for the first time, etc. All of those games happened several days, even maybe weeks, a good week before where we are right now in time. And it's,
what is your prescription? I mean, if you're a commissioner and you're God, everybody's talked about 162 versus 154, what it would do to the stats. You're paying the players to play these 8 games. I know it's a big deal in the NFL every time they talk about going from 16 to 18. Baseball's slow to move on everything, right? So I literally, glacially, as I've found out with the ownership here in Baltimore, nothing ever changes. I don't know what they're about. Making money every time they get in a room. It really is about how can we make more money, not how can we really make it better. I mean, they've been talking about making the game shorter my whole lifetime, and I look up and it's midnight on Sunday night, and they're still playing baseball. That's where it is.
Yeah, well, I think in some ways, I don't want to really see him change the number of games because I'm kind of I like the stats. I mean, that's something that's kind of universal throughout. I wonder if we can move it up a smidge, but then we've got things like the World Baseball Classic coming around again. As you say, they're all about making money, and I agree with some of these things because I've gotten to like them a lot. Division Championship Series, even the wild card I've kind of fallen in love with to a certain degree. So all these things that probably were money-making, deals at first. I still remember going to the owners' meeting where they rolled out, we're going to 3 divisions, and we're going to have a wild card team and all this stuff.
I remember Costas wrote a book about that back in 94, 95, about how it was just going to be the end of baseball as we know it. Maybe he's right to some degree because I don't think it really ever has been the same since the strike from a growth standpoint. I mean, the sport is not growing, and, Adam Jones spoke out about the whiteness of baseball, and all you have to do is put the television on. I traveled to 30 ballparks in 30 days last summer. The one thing that I took away is baseball's very white and baseball's very old, and I don't know, and the Orioles have a very empty stadium right now and a very, you would say the Orioles brand is sick, but it's not sick. They're making $100 million a year in profit off the television network, at least as long as the old man's alive. It's not sick from that perspective, but it is sick to watch the Orioles in a pennant race and see 15,000 people showing up at the ballpark.
Yeah, that's a real shame. And you're right. I mean, the demographics aren't great. I raised my son to be a baseball fan, and we were talking the other day. He's moved on. He's moved out of the house. He's doing fine, and we're just talking baseball, and he's just like going, "Oh, Dad, I don't know. I'm having a tough time." He can't watch entire games anymore. In fact,
I can't get into it, right? Is that what it is?
Well, it's just the length. And I know he's jumping around, and we'll text during games and everything, but I'll get a lot more texts from, say, a college football game, even though those are dragging out a long time, than it will maybe in a baseball game. And I think in some ways, the schedule going so late can be solved. I think the bigger issue, Nestor, is just the length of these games. My God, I must admit, if I wasn't, I would have stayed up. But once the game last night, if Chapman hadn't come in, I probably would have said, catch up with this in the morning and see what happened. And, it's just so, it has to pick up in terms of pace. And I realize some of the teams have made this an art form, in a sense, not so much dragging out, but playing out every at bat,
boring you out, so to speak, right? Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, but that's part of the analysis of the game is that there's so much statistical analysis, there's so many matchup issues, and at this point in the season, no one wants to be Buck Showalter and go home and have people making fun of you for 6 months because Buck earned it. I mean, whatever donut you want to put on Buck for leaving Britton out in the bullpen, he's going to have to sit on that for 6 months. I don't think Joe Madden and Terry Francona had months to think about what they're going to do in this circumstance. And obviously, they go to Miller and they go to Chapman now. And that's what they're going to do the next couple of nights. And either somebody's arm's going to fall off or somebody's going to make a mistake, right?
Right, exactly. And the thing is, it's like one thing, as you well know, to make all these plans and say, I don't know, May and August going, okay, if we end up in Game 7 of the World Series, I'm going to use my closer multiple innings like a Goose Gossage or something like that, and which I'm kind of relieved to see happen again. It's about time these relievers really muscled up, in my opinion. But it's one thing to say that, and make plans. It's another thing to actually do it. And I think finally we're seeing both managers do what they need to do. And as you say, who knows if it's going to work out? I mean, Chapman could go out there Tuesday night and be hanging on to a one-run lead and, gives up, back-to-back home runs and it's all over. But as you say, you might as well, if you're going to die on your sword, you might as well go with your best. And, the best will have you. Playing your best will have you sleep better at night.
Tim Wendell joining us here, longtime baseball writer, author, historian. He's written many books on baseball. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Tim_Wendell. That's Wendel. He's also a professor, a prof, as they say here at Hopkins. You're walking the earth these days, right? But, you're still writing about baseball. You got any more books, up your sleeve on the grand game or no?
I know. I'm starting to look at a couple of things. I mean, strikeouts I'm intrigued by, and I've been intrigued with it since I was in the stands. That was one of the few games I was actually at in person this past season when Scherzer hit 20. And I'm kind of going, that might be an interesting topic. And I just finished up a piece, believe it or not, I'm going back down to Cuba in January. Looks like we're going to do a sequel to Castro's Curveball.
Hey, I'm going to Cuba in January. Here we go, man.
We're going to have to match up plans here.
Absolutely.
So that's percolating around. I just finished up a piece for National Pastime, the website, about Fidel Castro, the ball player. That'll be coming up, I think, in a couple days. So, yeah, everything's going good, and I'm glad to hear, Jen's doing well. And actually my cancer memoir book will be coming out with Cornell Press and the great Dean J. Smith as editor end of this summer. Summer of 2017. So, yeah, things are going well.
Well, come on up and see us next Saturday. My wife's donor will be in town on the 12th. We're having a little party up here at Roost Chris Pier 5. Come by and eat some cake and have some fun. Last thing for you on the Cuba thing and on Chapman. I cover football for a living. I don't want to say primarily, but it's in our market, people like football more than they like baseball, sadly. Sure. I mean, none of my doing. I've been here 25 years trying to pit baseball against the wishes of the guy that actually owns the team. But the Chapman thing, I lived through Ray Rice, right? And we saw what happened with Josh Brown 2 weeks ago, the kicker up with the New York Giants. And, how is Chapman sort of skating through this? How are these uppity, female Cubs fans that would, boo Ray Rice out of the building? How are they getting their arms around Chapman at this point, who absolutely was radioactive and toxic? I mean, dude was 3 Mile Island. He was Chernobyl back in March. For the Reds, for the Dodgers, the Yankees took him on and sort of hit him. And now he's going to have the ball in his hand in the most important position. He's going to pitch it on Tuesday. He's going to pitch as long as they're in a ball game. And yet no one seems to say much about his transgressions of the offseason.
I'm not sure. Nestor, I found myself thinking that again Sunday night with the 8-out save. And the only thing I can come with, and I might be wrong, is the fact he went to the Yankees. being with that team makes you more
Sanitizes you.
Teflon. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like going through the car wash of PR or something, and then you come out like bright and shiny on the other side. But yeah,
Ray Rice is still looking for that lacquer that you're talking about on the outside, right?
Well, no, you gotta go for the top drawer thing. You gotta get the vacuum in and
I just
out,
can't imagine Ray Rice coming out and running around in the AFC Championship game in the third quarter. Everybody's saying, "Yeah, come on in, take the ball, let's go play." You're a good player. I mean, the thing with Chapman, he throws 104. We all know that, right? But I find it fascinating. Joe Buck is not allowed to talk about it. No one. I haven't seen any columns about it. I haven't seen Christine Brennan all pissed off about it. I haven't seen anyone that fights that fight in the public space. It's like he's just a regular guy, another guy, and I don't know that he's a regular guy, honestly.
I'm not so sure he's a regular guy either, knowing what I know, of his, his stint in even Cuba before he came out and such. But I found myself thinking the same thing Sunday night when they're doing like the close-ups and, he is going to hit and, the goofy grin, and he's like joking along with Dave Martinez, the Cubs coach, etc. I was going, So I don't know. Maybe it's the difference between sports. Maybe it's because, and this could be perception, maybe football is perceived to have a much bigger problem with domestic violence and all this other stuff than baseball, which isn't true, but and maybe it all goes all the way back to how Roger Goodell, the football commissioner, mishandled some things, so therefore, I don't know. I'm kind of guessing, but I think it's a very intriguing question, and one that I've thought of myself.
What's your favorite part of Cuba? What am I going to do in Cuba? I'm going to be calling you about this, but I went down in '99. I was there for the.
Yeah, that was a good time.
That was a great time. I didn't sleep much, and I keep telling my wife we got to get down there before they screw it up because we're going to screw it up, right? I mean.
Yeah, and there's going to be like Burger Kings on the corner and this type of thing, unfortunately. But I don't know. We'll talk. It's changing quick. I just heard from a buddy of mine that just came out. I think it's still a lot of fun. I just have heard of some great clubs and such down there. But just one thing I'd point out, I stayed, this will be my fourth trip. I've stayed for years at a hotel called the Hotel Inglaterra down near the harbor. And what I paid, like $65, $70, U.S., not bad. A buddy of mine just came out and said, "Oh, that hotel you like where you often stay?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm paying $275 U.S. Hold it first."
I looked at the Malia Cohiba down there just because, that's where I stayed, in '99.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time it was, pricey, like $119 a night in a hotel that probably would have been $400 a night in New York City. I looked the other day, literally, for 3 days, it was $720 a night to stay there in Havana. And I'm thinking, you could have bought the whole island for $720 2 years ago.
That's right. You could have had a whole block in Miramar.
I'm like, I'm not staying there. I need to find a mamacita, to put me upstairs and I need a bed and breakfast is what I need in Havana, Because my Spanish will make it. I'll get by. Tim Wendell joining us here, longtime professor, baseball historian. He'll be watching Game 6, Game 7. Anything you want to say on Buck letting Britain sit there? Big picture?
Anything on what? I'm sorry.
On Buck and Britain? I mean, any final words on that?
I think we touched on it. I know, I admire Buck a lot as a manager, but this has got to eat away at him. And I think we're seeing a different how much of this is going to carry over, I don't know. But Terry Francona has kind of led the way. Joe Madden is kind of now following in step. And we've talked about this for years, about how, here's the pivotal time of the game. It's maybe not a save situation because it's in the 6th or the 7th. It would really make more sense to bring in your best pitcher now. Nobody did it. I'm going to be interested if more managers follow suit with this thinking a little bit more in the regular season. That's probably a stretch, but next postseason could be real interesting. Your traditional roles, set up guys, all this stuff that we hear about, setting up the bullpen. Here's your 7th inning guy, your 8th inning guy. I think it's all gone out the window because they're seeing it's winning this way. So how many other guys are going to follow suit?
Always love having you on, man. Keep writing the books. We'll see you down in Cuba, and we'll check in again after the World Series, Tim. Be well.
All right. Very good. Thanks, man.
Tim Wendell,
Bye.
one of my favorite guests to have on the program, baseball author, professor, and longtime baseball writer at the USA Today. You can follow his journey at Tim_Wendell, Wendel. Game 6, maybe Game 7, a parade in Chicago, maybe another parade in Cleveland. Time will tell, but we are watching all week long. Steelers in town. Luke's on the backfields with the Ravens in Owings Mills, trying to get everybody healthy. We'll have some injury reports coming your way as well. Anything you missed this week, you can find in the bio Toyota Audio Vault at WNST.net. Anytime, anywhere. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.